All right. So I screwed a couple things up at the last place, so I'm not going to say anything other than, Mrs. DeWyse, would you please come forward? I will say that I'm her assistant.
Remember,
Got everything you need?
No,
I'll get that.
okay.
Or are you going to just talk here?
I'll talk here.
Okay.
Good morning. Good to be here. When Pastor Tim asked me if I would do this and go along with your series, I agreed, and I said I want to choose Be Wise because I want it to say Be Wise by Deb DeWyse. That's not true. I really chose Wise because I love Proverbs. Love, love, love Proverbs. And if you would remember several years ago, I had did something on the 4th of July called a picnic basket full of Proverbs, but I had so many other Proverbs to talk about that I thought that I could do a pocket full of Proverbs today. So, how does a man become wise? Well, Proverbs 1:7 says the first step is to trust and reverence the Lord, right? Everybody's got a lot of knowledge. Well, hopefully we have a lot of knowledge. But, you know, that knowledge goes away once we are done with this life. But wisdom can take us into the next life. So, wisdom is very important, and the first step is to trust and reverence the Lord. The second step would be to ask for it. Simply ask for it and pray about it. God asked Solomon, what would you like? Out of everything in the world, Solomon chose wisdom. I think Solomon chose wisdom because once we have wisdom, the rest will follow. I've prayed for wisdom for years, actually. Not there yet, but feel like every year I become more and more wise. And thirdly, Proverbs 4:11 says to carry out the instructions in Proverbs. And 4:11 says, I would have you learn this great fact, that a life of doing right is the wisest life there is. If you live that kind of life, you will not limp or stumble as you run. Carry out my instructions. So carry out those Proverbs. Don't forget them, for they will lead you to real living. I like that. So let's get started with our walk into Proverbs so we can get instructions for this life of ours. The first Proverbs 14:4. An empty stable stays clean, but there is no income from an empty stable. Okay, when I think of this, I think of myself. And there's Saturdays that Drake and Zeke go off for the day, and I spend the day cleaning and washing, and everything is perfect. And then I go sit in my chair, and then they come home. And they throw their clothes down. And they want to eat because they're hungry, and there's crumbs all over the countertop. And their hats get put every other way. And I get annoyed. And I bet there's a lot of other women that feel that way too. I get annoyed inside. I get frustrated. I think, I just cleaned this house. But I have to remember that an empty house may stay clean, but there's no love. An empty house may stay clean, but there's no laughter. An empty house can stay clean, but there's no relationship. So when I choose relationship, I have to realize that part of that comes with not a perfectly clean house or a car with no fingerprints on the windows or anything else like that. So Proverbs 4:11. Care less about what you own. Care more about how you live. I like that. The next couple verses are going to talk about the brain and the science at a very low level. But for the last 2 years, I've been teaching grades kindergarten through freshmen how the brain works, because I think that when we know how something works, we can better manage it when it's not working so well. If I know a few things about my car's not working, I can manage to try to figure out, if I can't fix it, I can maybe figure out why it's not working. Same with our brain, all right? If we understand how it works and then we get all emotional, we can better manage those emotions. So, Proverbs 15:15, when a man is gloomy, everything seems to go wrong. But when he is cheerful, everything seems right. Well, the brain has something in it called the reticular activating system. This is my reticular activating system, okay? The brain has 2.2 million bits of information coming into it every minute. Isn't that incredible? And those bits of information come through via our eyes, what we see, our touch, what we feel, our ears, what we hear. So there's a lot. Our brain can't process 2.2 million bits of information per minute. So it sifts. It sifts out what's important. Now, the question would be, how does the brain know what's important? The brain chooses what's important and what you think about the most. So, if I'm thinking that life is tough and it's not any good, guess what? That's what I'll find. And if I'm thinking that I have many blessings and the world's a great place, guess what? I'll find lots of blessings. Because the brain will take us and prove to us that what we're thinking is right, and then what we're thinking will increase. So do we want burdens to increase in our life, or do we want blessings? So Proverbs 15:15. You are not responsible for everything that happens to you, but you are responsible for how you deal with what happens to you. The next couple verses have to do with the part of our brain called the amygdala, which I know I've brought this in here before, but Proverbs 20:12. Well, first of all, let me give a little background about the amygdala. The amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, which is our thinking part of the brain, the amygdala is our emotional part of the brain, work hand in hand as life goes along. And as long as this baby is calm, there's messages going back between the two parts of the brain. When this gets really activated, when it gets really angry or it gets really depressed or really sad, what happens is that it breaks off those passageways. So when you are acting totally out of your emotions, all right? Do you ever do something you think, what in the world? Why would I do that? It's because you're not using that thinking part of your brain. You're using your emotional part of your brain, which is given to us so we react, and we react quickly, okay? Well, there's scientific research out there that shows there are 5 daily practices that we can do that keep this amygdala calm and, One of them is kindness. Proverbs 11:17, your own soul is nourished when you are kind. It is destroyed when you are cruel. See, science is finally catching up to the scriptures, as Pastor Tim had said several weeks ago. The other thing that you can do, a daily practice, is gratitude. Okay, gratitude. Proverbs 20:12, if you have good eyesight and good hearing, thank God who gave them to you. The 3 other daily practices that I'm not going to talk about, but they call them different words, of course. They're not going to call them scriptural words. They call it perspective talking. Really what that is empathy. They talk about optimism, which is nothing more than hope. And the 5th daily practice that they talk about that does keep this amygdala calm is service to others. Now, the interesting thing is when I show kindness to Zeke, when I don't get frustrated when he has his pile of clothes on the floor, okay, what I do is I release serotonin in his brain because of my kindness, and serotonin is released in my brain. That, again, keeps our amygdala calm. So those 5 daily practices are a win-win situation. They're a win for me, and they're a win for the other person. Which brings me to Proverbs 11:25 that says, whoever brings blessings becomes enriched, and one who waters will himself be watered. Isn't that awesome? Proverbs 18:11, and this isn't on your paper. The rich man thinks of his wealth as an impregnable defense, a high wall of safety. What a dreamer. You know, when things went to kaput several years ago during the recession, and we started to come out of it, and Zeke, as a businessman, decided he had to start taking risks because that's what businessmen do. I didn't like when we weren't doing so well and wanted to build this little nest egg up, okay? So anything that he would say, I would say, nope, 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 nope. Didn't want him to take any risks because I was more concerned about my safety and my security, all right? And Zeke, in his infinite wisdom, brought me into his office one day, sat me down, and said very kindly and nicely, Deb, how much money will it take for you in the bank for you to feel safe and secure? And that question made me realize that there wasn't any amount of money that would make me safe and secure. And it showed me that what was the problem was that my attitude was that I was getting my safety and security from the wrong thing. So, Proverbs 18:11, the promises of God should be my safety and my security. Proverbs 18:15, and I don't think this is on the paper either. An intelligent heart acquires knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeks knowledge. Just found some statistics that really kind of blew me out of the water. 33% of high school graduates never read another book the rest of their lives. Think about that. A third of all the people that graduate from high school never read another book. 42% of college graduates never read another book after college. So once you graduate from college, half the people don't read another book. 80% of U.S. families did not buy or read a book in the last year. Where do we get our knowledge from if we're not reading and trying to grow? It's so important to challenge our thinking every day. Every day. I've got about 5 books going right now. Eat Dirt, number 1, talks about the digestive system. I'm actually reading one about, and this will probably appall some people, but Hugh Hefner and the Playboy Bunnies. I'm reading that because how do I understand some of those people if I don't? How can I show compassion and empathy for people that think different than I do if I don't first get an understanding of how they think, right? I'm reading a book, well, I'm reading several. If you don't read, there's ways to get it. But if all of the information that we're getting is by what we're watching on TV, I've thought about what I watched on TV last week. Football playoffs, American Home Funniest Videos. I mean, it's not going to grow me. It's not going to challenge me. And what happens is this, when we live in our own little world, right? And the only information that we have coming is the things that we amuse ourselves with, and we're not challenging our thinking. I think what happens is that we become scared because we don't want anyone to challenge our thinking, and we become very small. And then when somebody does try to challenge that, we get very controlling. I think it's very, very important to challenge ourselves each and every day. Challenge our faith. Our faith it's worth a challenge. It can handle it. So, Proverbs 18:15, everyone you will ever meet knows something that you don't. Or any book that you read, you'll learn something new. Proverbs 25:13, a faithful employee is as refreshing as a cool day in the hot summertime. Amen to that. You know, we all think that we have to do such great things for God. The truth of the matter is, just go to work every day and be the one employee that doesn't complain. You know, I walked into the teacher's lounge after Christmas, and there were new chairs there. And I walked in, it was like, oh my gosh, look at new chairs. Oh, these are awesome. Where'd they come from? And somebody said, can't get a raise, but we get new chairs. Really? Really? It was not Sheila, no. Nor to me. You know, that person wasn't refreshing as a cool day. They really weren't. And how many of us have been blessed by the toll booth person at the Mackinac Bridge who greets every person with a smile and an affirming word and an encouraging word? He makes your world better after spending 3 or 4 seconds with him, doesn't he? So Proverbs 25:13, nobility in work lies not so much in the work that we do, but in the excellence that we bring to it. Proverbs 27:7, even honey seems tasteless to a man who is full, but if he is hungry, he'll eat anything. Okay, when I think of this, I think of my husband who has a bad habit of eating breakfast and then not eating all day and then coming home about 6 o'clock and it is just famished. And it's like it really is like a bear. I mean, he opens those refrigerators and he just starts piling this food in. I'm sorry, Zeke. But it's true. Why? Because he's hungry. Is he filling it with good nutrition stuff? No. He's just looking to satisfy that hunger. He's filling it with chips and cookies and anything that's right there, readily available. Okay? Well, do you ever wonder why people pick like silly partners or make silly friendships or make poor choices in the relationships? It's because they're hungry. They're hungry for love. They're hungry for acceptance. They're hungry for belonging. And when you're hungry, you'll eat anything. You know, I know that there's been a time in my life that I've been hungry for love and acceptance. And I'm telling you, it wasn't as easy not to eat of those things as it is now when I'm full. So I'm thinking that instead of judging these people that are hungry, let's help them get full. So Proverbs 27:7, we all eat lies when our hearts are hungry. Proverbs 27:14, if you shout a pleasant greeting to a friend too early in the morning, he will count it as a curse. Okay. When I think of this, I think that oftentimes we give people what we need instead of giving people what they need. And oftentimes when we give people what we need, it's a curse to them. You know, when Desiree was home, her and her boyfriend were talking to me. They're reading the 5 Love Languages by, I think it's Gary Smalley. And they were talking about the different love languages that they have. And it was interesting to me because, you know, Zeke and I have talked about this a little bit, but my love language is acts of service. And so that's what I give Zeke, is acts of service. He could care less. He could care less about a clean house or laundry or anything, but that's what I give to him because that's what I need. Zeke, on the other hand, you know, a male, you know, physical attention or affection, right? And he gives that to me, but I don't want that. I want acts of service. So remember that if you shout a pleasant greeting to a friend too early in the morning, he will count it as a curse. And let's give people what they need, not what we need. So, Proverbs 27:20, ambition and death are alike in this, neither is ever satisfied. We all know that the pain of death is never satisfied. My dad has been gone for over 30 years, and there's still times in the shower that I cry over the loss of my dad. You know, and I don't think about it every day, but now when I'm talking about it, I can feel my body start to move to tears already. Death, the hurt of death, is never satisfied. Neither is ambition. You know, I listened to Ravi Zachariah, and I don't remember the name. I think the name of it was There's Nothing New Under the Sun. And he talked about Deion Sanders, who, if you're a football fan, know that he played for the Dallas Cowboys. And Deion Sanders talked about the day after he had won the Super Bowl. He said, I had attained everything that I had ever wanted. He said, I had won the Super Bowl. I had just ordered my brand new Lamborghini. I had my big Super Bowl ring on my finger. I was looking over the city as my house was on a mountain, and I had all these beautiful windows in front of me. And I thought, I should just take my life now. Because he realized that everything that he wanted, he had, and it wasn't enough. So ambition and death is never satisfied. Ambitions are so powerful a passion in the human breast that however high we reach, we are never truly satisfied. And I think we've all dealt with that. Probably not on the biggest scale as Deion Sanders, but we get what we want, and then we want a little bit more, and then we want a little bit more. You know, I remember years ago when the kids were young, I borrowed Craig and Tammy's motorhome, and I took them to Shaky Lakes. We went camping for a couple days. And we just thought we had the world by the tail till we got to the park, and we looked at all those other campers, and they were bigger and badder than ours. And you start to not be quite as satisfied. So be careful of your ambition. Proverbs 27:21. The purity of silver and gold can be tested in a crucible, but a man is tested by his reaction to men's praise. Well, I'm going to switch this around a little bit because I don't even know if I'm pronouncing this right, but a crucible, what it does is it heats up the silver and the gold, and it sees its purity, okay? This is what I find often as the athletic director, is that when you heat things up, people are really terrific when everything's going their way. Everything's going their way. They're nice, they're kind, they're loving, they like you, they're high-fiving you. But the minute things get heated up a little bit, the minute things don't go your way, and they're not getting the praise of men, or they're not getting what they want, it's not quite so pretty. Not quite so pretty. So, Proverbs 27:21. Make sure that when life heats you up, that you behave yourself. The soul has no secret that the behavior does not reveal. I think that's the thing. We can hide our junk when things are going well. It's really easy to hide it because it's really easy to be in a great mood when things are going well. But that junk will come out when things heat up. So take care of your junk. Take care of your junk. Proverbs 28:23. In the end, people appreciate frankness more than flattery. As I talk about flattery and frankness, I want you to look at it from the perspective of hearing it and then the perspective of saying it. So, frankness is hard. Flattery is easy. I want to read an essay that was written by Elijah Lynn Litton back in 1883. I'm just going to read a real short portion of it. Nothing is so delightful as flattery. To hear and believe pleasant fictions about oneself is a temptation too seductive for weak mortals to resist, as the typical legends of all mythologies and the private histories of most individuals show. Yeah, flattery is easy. Frankness is hard. Frankness takes time. Flattery takes but a second. You know, many years ago, there was a Christian friend of mine who showed some really unbecoming behavior. And God wanted me to deal with it. I didn't want to. I mean, I just really didn't want to. Because quite frankly, frankness is hard. And it takes time. But in the end, I wrote a letter to this person. And a letter like that, you can't just, 10 minutes. You got to think about it, and you want to be gentle, and you want to be kind, but you want to get your point across. So it takes time. And they got the letter, and they were angry. They were very angry. And they were angry for some time. Because when you call people on their junk, they get angry. But in the end, we have a deeper relationship because of that. In the end, the relationship isn't as shallow as it once was. And in the end, I believe, I hope, we're both better people because of that. See, frankness creates self-esteem. Flattery creates self-absorption. Flattery is self-motivated. Insincere and excessive compliments for personal advantage. And frankness is other motivated. That letter was written to that person because I wanted them to be a better person. And I wanted God to be better represented in the community. You know, if there's one gift that Zeke and I have, it's that we can be brutally frank with each other. And it stinks. Oh my gosh, it stinks sometimes. And it hurts. It hurts. But I know without question that I'm a better woman times 10 because of his brutal honesty. So Proverbs 28:23, the mutual preference of frankness over flattery is what leads to iron sharpening iron. Proverbs 29:13, rich and poor are alike in this. Each depends on God for light. You know, in this wonderful culture that we live in, I laugh when I say the word culture because my son is taking a college class, and he must have been working on it last night at the cabin, and he texted me and said, Mom, what's my culture? And I wrote back, white trash, LOL. But anyway, but in our culture, right, we have all kinds of different titles. We have all kinds of different power. We all are in a different place financially. But guess what? The emergency room levels that playing field, right? When I go into the emergency room, I take off my titles, I get rid of my power. There's not much power in a little gown. Doesn't matter how much money I have. I'm no different than the homeless man sitting next to me, where we both have the need for God. So, Proverbs 29:13, rich and poor are alike in this. Each depends on God for light or for the things that really matter. The emergency room levels the playing field. Proverbs 30:11 and 12, there are those who curse their father and mother and feel themselves faultless despite their many sins. This isn't going to be about moms and dads, but that quit being a victim and buck up, right? Quit being a victim. You know, it's easy to be a victim because when you choose to be a victim, then you don't have to take responsibility for anything because of this. You know, I have kids that come to me and say, you know, Mrs. DeWyse, I have anger issues. Yep, I know you do. But you know what that means? That means that you got a bigger hole to climb out of than some kids. So let's start climbing. Okay? We don't want to use what has happened to us to become a victim. You know, I love what Beth Moore says. We are all Timothys who are called to buck up, take our share of suffering, and quit being dashed and demoralized over every criticism and attack. Amen. All right? Let's stand up. Let's be strong. Or as Eric Creighton says, in the long term, the obstacle that stands between us and healing is often not the injury we have received, but ourselves. Our decision to keep the injury alive and open long after it should have been a hard-won scar. You know, I'm telling you, I've been the AD for 6 years, and there has never, ever been a time where Ingadine had a victory and I had a fan come up to me and say, man, those refs were terrible tonight. Never. Never in 6 years. But I'm going to tell you something. In 6 years, every loss that we have ever had, I've had somebody come up to me and say, man, those refs were rough tonight. Man, those refs didn't know what they were doing tonight. Right? We're putting blame. We're assigning blame. We're ridding ourselves of the responsibility that our kids might not have played that well, or whatever it may be. So buck up, like Beth Moore says. I like that. Proverbs 30:33. As the churning of the cream yields butter, and a blow to the nose causes bleeding, so anger causes quarrels. Cause and effect. I have found that many students in the last several weeks are just learning the lesson about cause and effect. They're coming to me saying, Mrs. DeWyse, I'm failing personal finance. What do I do? Well, you do what you should have been doing, which is coming to class and getting your homework done. And we don't understand, kids struggle with cause and effect. But what I find in the Christian world is that Christians struggle with cause and effect. Years ago, and I know this is from God because I can remember this like it was yesterday. And I think I've shared this before. But I was driving to the bank. And we had had a lot of health issues. And we had depleted our health savings account. And we were paying a lot of medical bills. And we didn't have a ton of money at that time. And we were just at the end of it. And I knew that we could start replenishing our health savings account. And so I was praying for good health. And when I prayed that prayer, I was on the Hiawatha Trail, going to the bank. And I said, Lord, just keep us healthy. And he, from the depth of my being, he said, and what are you doing about that? And I looked down in my compartment, and I had an open Mountain Dew, 2 Dove chocolates, and a package of red licorice. And first I laughed because I was so excited that God spoke to me. But then I thought, you know what? He's absolutely right. How dare I ask God to bless my health when I wasn't doing anything about it? See, I can go up to the top of my roof and I can say, I'm going to jump, and Lord, I'm going to pray that you'll protect me. And I can pray as long and as hard and as beautiful as anybody in the world. But I can guarantee you, if I jump off that roof, I'm coming down. And I'm going to hurt myself. Because there is a natural law of gravity. Right? We as Christians can't treat our relationships poorly and then pray for God to put them back together. We can't pray for good health when we don't eat properly and don't have physical exercise. There's a cause and effect to it. And it pertains not just to kids, but to us as Christians. We use God as our magic genie, and that's what I was doing that day as I was traveling to the bank. Lord, I don't have to have exercise, and I can eat whatever I want. But then I'm going to ask you to take care of me. Or as the Bible says, as you sow, so shall you reap. So, Proverbs 30:33. Shallow men believe in luck or in circumstances. Strong men believe in cause and effect. So, I hope that you got a little bit of knowledge from this. Let's pray.